Hi everybody, welcome back. We're going to continue on now creating a template for our bottle. This sort of next couple of steps, what we're going to do is start creating the template sections or the shells for the lid and the thread on the bottle, and also the little rim or ring that goes around the bottom of the cap. So I'm going to turn off Isolate Select to reveal them again. And really the main one that I'm interested in is the cap, and the reason for that is that we're going to use a bump map around the outside surface of the cap, and also we might want to put a label on the top. So I need to create a template shell for the top and also one for the sort of circumference, the sides. The thread and the ring, this thing here, really aren't going to have any kind of image texture applied to them. They're going to have a plastic material applied onto them, so we don't really need to worry so much about the template. So we'll do both of those first, and then we'll move on to the cap. I'm just going to shift the cap out of the way for a minute, just using the move tool. I'll just pop that over sort of here. Okay, so I'm going to start off with the ring. So I'm going to select that, and I'm going to come back up to Create UVs and down to Planar Mapping again. And I'm just going to do a basic y-axis planar map, which is the same as what we did with the bottom of the bottle. So you can see here that basically you can either project entire objects, or you can project selected polygons. So I'm just going to keep these settings as they are. Project from y-axis, keep image width height ratio is ticked. So I'll just press project, and you can see here that basically what it's doing is creating a projection of that object. Okay, so we're just getting this little ring shape, and I'll just move this off down to the side here. So that's that one done. I want to do the same thing with the thread on the bottle. So I'm going to right click and hold on the object, select object mode, just select the thread just here. Now you can see up here that basically I've still got some random numbers in the channel box. Okay, so if you open your channel box up here, if you've got any random numbers on these, what you need to do is come up to Modify Freeze Transformations, and it'll just reset them. The reason that we don't want any numbers in here is that sometimes if you create a template for an object and then you move it, it can sometimes scramble the template up, and you basically have to do the template again. So we've just got all of that zeroed out. So I've got the helix selected. I'm going to do another y-axis projection. So back up to Create UVs and down to Planar Mapping. This time I'm just going to press Planar Mapping because I know the settings are okay already. And it's created that there. And I'll just move this down here and then deselect. Okay, so that's those two done. As you can see, really quick to do. So now what I want to do is do this lid, or cap. So I'm going to come across back to my channel box, and I'll type in translate X 0, and that'll place it back in position. And just for now, what I'm going to do is hide everything else. So with the cap selected, I'll just press Isolate Select again, and that just hides all the other objects. I'll press F to zoom in on the object and center it. Now you can see here at the moment there's no sort of underside of the cap. If you want to add an underside so that maybe you could render the object with the lid off, what you need to do is just select face mode and just hold shift down and select all of the polygons here on the bottom like this. Make sure nothing else is selected, and basically you can go to Edit Mesh Extrude and then use the offset value, hold control down and left click and drag on offset, and that'll shrink the selection in. And you only want to go in a little bit, you don't want to make this too big. Okay, so just like that, and then go back up to Edit Mesh and select Extrude again, and then press, or don't press, but select the blue arrow, push that up into the lid. Okay, now you just want to make sure that basically you don't shoot out the top like that. Okay, so you just want to go up into there. If you're not sure, you can press this X-ray button so you can see through the object, so you can see how far you've gone. Okay, so once you get to about there, basically what you do is you extrude again. So go Edit Mesh, Extrude, and this time what you want to do is just move this up slightly, just a little bit, so you get a little edge in there. And what that'll do is make sure that it basically makes sure that the that corner stays pretty sharp. Turn the tool off, deselect those polygons, and then what we need to do is just bevel this edge in here. So right click and hold, select edge mode, double click this edge, and then go Edit Mesh, Bevel. You can go to the options for that. We used those settings in the last video, so you can just try applying those again, and that's pretty good. That's about what we would want. Essentially, you want this bevel in here to roughly be about the same size as this one. Once again, if this is way bigger or way smaller, just go up to Edit, select Undo, just here, and then just change this number and either make it bigger or smaller depending on if you need the bevel to be bigger or smaller. So that's sort of how that works. So now if you press 3, you can see that it smooths off, and it's quite nice. It's quite a nice shape now. Okay, select it again, press 1 so that it's not smooth. We don't want to kind of create templates for our UVs when it's smooth, and we need to get rid of all of these inputs now before we do a template. So we'll just go Edit, Delete by Type History, and keep in mind that the object is selected when I'm doing this. Okay, so let's create a template. First thing I'm going to do is just grab the selection tool over here, and then I'm going to right click and hold and select face mode. And I'm going to double click, sorry, not double click, I'm going to click on one of the side polygons and then hold shift and double click the one next to it. And that'll select around the, basically around the circumference of the lid. Okay. Now if you like, what you can do is you can hold down the shift key and tap the full stop key once, and that'll expand the selection up like this. All right. And what we're going to do now is create a template for this piece, and basically it's a cylinder. Okay, so what we'll do is go Create UVs, Cylindrical Mapping, and there it is there. Now obviously this is going to be quite a little bit too tall in proportion to the size of the polygons here. You can see that these polygons here should basically be the same proportion as these. So these are actually a lot taller than they should be, and we're going to edit that later on. So just move this out of the way. Okay, deselect everything by clicking in an empty spot, and then what we want to do is basically select all the polygons on the top of the lid. So the quickest way of doing that is going to be selecting one of these outer ring polygons just here, holding shift, double clicking next to it, or the polygon next to it, and then what we'll do is expand this selection out by one row of polygons. So we hold down shift and tap full stop, but you can see here that what's happened is that it's also selected the polygons that we just created templates for. So I'm going to reduce the selection now to shrink it back to the original row of polys. So I'll hold down shift and hit the comma key. So full stop expands, comma contracts or shrinks the selection. So with those selected, I'm going to create a template. Now technically we could do the insides as well, but I'm not going to worry about those because they're not going to have any kind of images stuck to them. So just with these selected, go to Create UVs. Now this time it's a flat shape. Okay, we're looking down at the top of the lid and it's kind of flat. So I'm going to use planar mapping again. And that'll just give us this circular shape, which I can pop down here. Okay, deselect everything again, and you can see now basically we're left with this piece here, and that's the inside of the object. Now rather than just kind of leaving that there, because it is kind of messy, what I'm going to do is select face mode. So I'm just right clicking and holding, selecting face mode. Drag a box across everything that's left, and you should see the whole inside select like this. What I'm going to do here is just do a planar map of that as well. So go Create UVs, planar mapping, like that. So what that's done is basically created a template for the inside of the object, and it's the same size more or less as this top section up here. Now notice that it's red. in this case. So that's basically inside out or reversed. What I want to do is just flip that sideways. So just use flip selected UVs in U direction, just here, and that'll flip it around. And then just bring this down here. Now once again, you can kind of plonk these anywhere you want, but I'm sort of placing them down here, just out of the way. Okay, now for some reason that just got stuck for me, so I'm just going to right click, select UV again, and drag a box across them, and just moving them manually. It's a really good idea to save every couple of minutes when you're using this editor, especially on a Mac, because I tend to find sometimes it causes the software to crash. Technically it shouldn't, but I've just found on occasion it does. So I'm going to save this here now. So I'm going to go File, Save Scene As. And the last one I used was TVC Bottle 3. I'm going to change this to 4. And I'm going to then, at the end, just put capital UV. So I know that this is the file where I started doing my UVs. And I'll press Save. Okay. So basically we've got, if we have a look here, we've got the outer sort of edge of the bottle lid. We've got the top of the bottle lid and then the inside. Now this piece here is not really important, but we need to kind of have it here anyway. So the main two areas we'd be focusing on are these. Okay, so basically that's all of the parts of the bottle mapped with the exception of the label. So I'm going to turn off Isolate Select up here to bring the bottle back into view, and I'm going to select the bottle. And what I'm going to do is create the label now. And to do that, what we're going to do is use the polygons here where the label would normally be on the bottle. So I'm going to right click and hold and select face mode. And what I want to do is basically select this ring of polygons here and the next ring down. So I'll select one of them and I'll hold shift down and double click the polygon next to it like this, and then I'll do the same thing here. Now I have found that Maya sometimes does this. Okay, so you can see here it's selected the first row okay, but I tend to find when you go to select the second row, it seems to reverse the direction of the polygons. It kind of treats them as though they're 90 degrees. I'm going to undo that, so edit, undo, select. Okay, and I'll edit, undo that select as well. And what I might try is maybe going this way. So if I hold shift and double click this one, you can see now that it's actually selecting around. So basically if you select one of these on the second row, double click the one next to it with shift held down. If the selection goes in the wrong direction, basically deselect that one and try double clicking the one on the other side. Okay. So once I have that selection done, look, manually, you could technically just manually select them by holding shift and clicking on every single one of them, but it just takes a bit longer. So what I'm going to do here is basically I want to select this row and this row as well. So to do that, I can just expand the selection out by holding shift and tapping the full stop button on the keyboard, and that'll expand that out. Okay, so this is going to become the label, and you can see over here I have those polygons selected. What I'm going to do is duplicate these polygons and basically just kind of shift them out slightly. So sometimes in this situation you might be kind of tempted to use the extrude tool, but I don't want this to actually still be part of the bottle. I want it to actually be a separate piece. What I'm going to do is come up to Edit Mesh, and rather than using extrude, I'm going to use duplicate face just here. So I'll click on that, and you can see that the selected area goes green and the rest of the bottle goes white. So basically this is now a separate object. Okay, and what I can do here is grab the blue arrow. So this looks like the extrude tool kind of. I can grab this blue arrow and drag it just a little bit, just a fraction, and it pops off the surface of the bottle. There's now a gap in here. So essentially what I've done is sort of separated that off as a separate piece. The same way as a plastic label would be kind of glued onto an actual bottle. So if I right click and select object mode now, you can see here I've got this label and just I'll just move it off to the side so you can see this for a second. So basically what I've got is this and the original bottle. But notice that this new label piece actually has the same UVs as the equivalent section of the bottle that we originally selected. So it's got basically a label, a UV label built in now. So that's a great way of kind of creating bottle labels. You create the label last after you do the UV. So what I'm going to do here, with the label selected, I'm going to come up to the Move UV Shell tool, and I'm going to click on the label, and then I'm going to move that just sort of up or down. Just move it out of the way so that it's not sitting over the bottle anymore. And then turn the tool off, and then right click and select Object Mode and deselect everything. Okay, so now what we need to do is start arranging things, and we need to see whether or not the parts of the model are actually proportioned properly on the template. If I drag a box across everything on the model, you can see that we have all of these different pieces, and so we need to make sure that they're all kind of scaled right. The main ones that are going to be needing adjustment are most of the cylindrical parts. So the label, the bottle, and the sides of the cap. The planar templates, like the bottom of the bottle, the top of the cap, the inside of the cap, and the ring and the thread, really will be okay. They'll be in proportion to one another. They're not stretched, but all the labels and the cylindrical bits will be stretched. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a new texture for the model, and we're going to load in a checkerboard onto it, and that will show us which parts of the model are stretched. So the first thing I'm going to do with all of this selected is I'm going to delete the history on it. I'll go Edit, Delete by Type, History. And that just gets rid of any inputs that we've created while making the template shells over here. The next thing I'm going to do is right click and hold on the object, and it doesn't matter which part of the object at this point. And I'm going to come down to Assign Favorite Material, and I'm going to select Lambert. And our attribute editor should pop open. What we want to do is look for Lambert 2. That's the new material we've just added. And if we scroll up, what we want to do is find Color, come across to the Input, and click on that. And from the list that we get, Create Render Node, we want to select Checker. Now you'll notice on screen nothing's happening. What I need to do is press this button just here, Textured, or press 6 on the keyboard. And that will display the texture for the object. So basically what we want to do is find any areas where the texture isn't square. You can see here these are nice and square, these little checkerboard patterns. You'll notice here on the bottle, sections of it, most of it in fact, is actually stretched. Okay, so the black and white squares on here are actually taller than they are wide. So this means that basically the bottle is actually stretched on the template. So if I select the object here, basically this piece here needs to be basically stretched vertically so that these patterns become squares. The bottom will be squares because we did a planar map on that, so you can see that there. So that's what we need to do. So let's start off with the main body of the bottle. What we'll do is kind of zoom in over here. So this is the main body of the bottle. It's the inside and the outside overlaid on top of one another. Now sometimes it's okay to keep parts overlaid like this. In this situation, I'm just going to leave them as they are. What I'm going to do is click on the Move UV Shell tool, and I'll just drag a box across part of that, and it will select the whole thing. I'll then come over to the Scale tool and just select that. And what I want to do here is basically drag the V handle, which is the green one, up or down. And while I'm doing that, I need to look over here. And what I want to do is drag this either up or down and make these shapes squares. So if I click on here and drag, if I drag up, you can see that the texture is kind of shrinking, And the further down it shrinks, the closer to being squares the pattern gets. So I want to get to about there, roughly. So if you have a look at, like here, for example, that's kind of a square, that little black shape. All right, I can probably squash it down a little bit more. That's a bit better. So that's closer to being a square. All right. Now you are going to get some up here towards the bottle. As the bottle neck narrows up here, you're going to get rectangles up here. Because basically as this gets narrower, it's kind of compressing the polygons. Whereas on the template, you can see here, it doesn't get narrower at the top. All right. But what it's doing is basically compressing the texture down and keeping it kind of in scale. So that's really all we need to do. Then what we do is the same thing for the other parts. So I'm going to do the label next. So right click and hold, select object, and then click the label, and look for it on the template. So here it is here. I'll click the Move UV shell tool and select the label. Now I'm using that because it's a quick way of selecting an entire piece. All right. The other way of doing it would be to right click, select UV mode, and then drag a box across it, or drag a box around it. So you can do it either way. Turn on the scale tool just here, and then drag the V handle again, the vertical handle. So I'm dragging this up again to about there. So you can see now on the label, I've now got these squares. Okay. All right. So the only other parts really are the sides of the cap. That's the next major part. So I'll just click on the cap, and you can see that the template appears. I'll turn on Move UV Shell Tool again and click on this cap section. This is the only part that really needs adjusting for the cap. And you can see with these, it's the same thing again, except now they're kind of squashed. So I'm going to select the scale tool, and this time I'm going to grab the V handle and drag it down. So you can see when you make something shorter here, the texture over here gets bigger. And once again, we just drag it down until it's square, like that. Now don't worry too much if the squares on here are smaller than the squares on here. It's not necessarily absolutely vital that they are all exactly the same size for this project. So you can see the tops here are smaller than, say, the sides. That doesn't really matter too much. Okay, as long as they're square. As long as these are basically square, you won't get stretching on your textures. Okay, so I'll just right click on the object, hit object mode, click out here to deselect. So basically that's sort of all of the parts of the object with the templates all created. So in the next video, I'm going to leave this one here. In the next video, what we're going to do is take all of these pieces and fit them into this corner of the grid. And then we'll export it and put it in a Photoshop and start painting our texture maps. So what we'll do, just for now, we'll save the file again. So just go File, Save Scene, and just hit Continue. And I'll see you in the next video.